Join us on a journey where we unravel the latest trends, tackle your burning questions, and explore innovative strategies that are shaping the future of compensation, all with a cup of coffee in hand. Hello, and welcome back, everybody, to Comp and Coffee. I'm Ruth Thomas, Chief Compensation Strategist here at Payscale, and your host of the podcast. We're recording this episode just over a month after we all attended HR Tech in Las Vegas at the end of September. There was a lot of noise, not surprisingly, at the conference around AI. That seems to be one of the dominant topics. I think AI and pay transparency would be on my bingo card for any headline around compensation at the moment. There's a lot of flashy announcements out there and also a lot of cautious optimism from the community around, what AI is really going to bring to compensation and HR leaders. And so this episode, we're going to dig into that. We're going to consider what we saw at HR Tech and think about the impact of AI on the HR and compensation world. And my guests today bring a mix of perspectives from product leadership and product design to independent industry analysis. And they're going to share their reflections from HR Tech and talk about where AI can truly help practitioners moving forward. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves. Mark Feffer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Mark Feffer. I publish the newsletter WorkforceAI.News. I'm also a contributing analyst for 360 Insights, and I've been to a lot of HR Techs.
And we had the opportunity, obviously, to meet with you and brief with you whilst we were in Vegas. So, Olivia, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'd love to. Thanks, Ruth. Hi, my name is Olivia Sedler. I'm a senior product manager here at Payscale.
Finding a great career has always been a challenge. But today, with the massive changes underway in just about every sector of the economy, in just about every country in the world, finding a great new career is even more challenging. And if you're a student, recent graduate, or someone else early in their career, it's even harder for you because you just don't have the experience that those who might be 10, 20, 30 years older than you have. The answer? The podcast. From dorms to desks. A podcast by College Recruiter job search site, where every week we take a deep dive into a topic specifically of interest to candidates who are early in their careers and looking for a great part-time, seasonal, internship, or other entry-level job.
Payscale, I've been with the organization for a little over 5 years now, primarily working within our Pay Factors platform. I've gone all over the map over the last 5 years for workflows, but the most recently I'll be focusing on our intelligence and insights and how we bring that as a new layer into our platform.
Thank you, Olivia. I think your big launch coming up. I know there was a few late hours last night as we're preparing for the launch. One of the products I think you're going to tell us about a little later on. And Peh, would you like to introduce yourself?
For sure. Thank you, Ruth. So my name is Peh, and I'm the Chief Product Officer at Payscale. So I'm responsible for both the product and engineering group here at Payscale. I'm a relatively newbie in the compensation space. I joined Payscale about a year ago and bringing my background on other technologies and industries into the compensation space and try to basically help improve what we have been doing here.
Thank you, Peh. Okay, so let's start with our takeaways from HR Tech. The exhibit floor, it was hard to move without seeing all the booths labeled with AI or agent powered. And it was clear that we have moved on from a lot in 12 months, and vendors have made a lot of progress on adopting and integrating AI into their platforms. And also we are starting to see more and more new startups, the AI native companies coming into this landscape, which may add an interesting dynamic to the whole vendor profile here. We also know that CEOs are heavily thinking about investing in the AI transformation. 1/3 of CEOs say Gen AI has increased revenue and profitability for them over the past year. At the same time, there's a lot of speculation about, are we hitting some kind of AI bubble and from a like evaluation perspective. But it's definitely, this is a strongly emerging topic. Behind the scenes, we hear practitioners, they're excited, but they also have an element of caution, whilst at the same time being somewhat frustrated by some of the AI whitewashing that they're seeing from vendors. So a lot to think about there. Mark, I'd love you to start us off from your research and conversations. How do you think HR leaders are distinguishing between the hype and solutions that are actually delivering for them?
I'm not entirely sure that they are. I think they're becoming more inclined to really ask questions. And one of the things that struck me about the whole conference was there was this very different tone. In the last few years, if you've gone, people talked about AI like it was a holy gift. It was involved in everything, and it was just going to solve everything. This year, the vendors were really emphasizing results, that with this AI tool or that AI tool, they could help you achieve certain specific goals. They could talk to you about the performance of their tool. And the users themselves were ahead of them, I think, because they've been saying that kind of thing for a while. When I talk to practitioners, they often talk more about what is the technology actually going to do for them. Just the fact that it's AI doesn't really connect with them. And I think that was very evident. It was a very big change. New announcements always said they were AI based. There was no change there. But the overall tone and what the overall message was from everybody, again, was very different.
Yeah, I think that was really, as I mentioned in my intro, my key takeaway of how far we've come in the last 12 months. As you said, when I attended the show, we started to talk about it 2 years ago. Last year, everyone was talking about agents, but didn't really know what they were. And now we're really seeing how, as you say, vendors are starting to deploy both AI and agents in their applications, and really starting to get more familiar with the problems that AI can try and solve and the opportunity of that. And I know that's something that we're kind of really excited about here at Payscale. Peh, obviously from your time at HR Tech, what struck you most about how vendors were framing AI versus what customers were asking for?
Yeah, thank you, Ru. I did not go to the previous or last year's HR Tech, so I do not know what kind of AI is being described there. So as almost like an outsider to the industry, this particular HR Tech that I went with is still a little bit more focusing very much on the AI technology itself. I believe the change has moved a lot more towards the agentic. It's less focused on the problem that AI is trying to solve. It seems as though that the technology is taking the center stage in terms of the primary thing that is being articulated, versus this is the problem that we're trying to solve, and AI is the technology that powering it and help you solve it in a much more effective and efficient way across the board. That seems to be the key, and it's kind of relying on the customer and consumer to basically dig through all the AI's noise to really understand what real problem are they solving for me on a day-to-day basis in my workflow and how that helps. In my opinion, and the way I kind of think about AI and all this technology structure, typically, there is got a technology in the background to help you solve the problem that really matters to you and help improve your workflow. We're starting to see, or at least I'm starting to see, some of the vendors in the HR tech is doing that, but majority of them are still very much centric around the technology itself rather than the problem that is solving itself. That's my observation.
Yeah, and I think it'd be interesting to see where we are in 12 months' time when we start to see like real use cases and where customers have been deploying AI and agents to kind of see the value that they're seeing in that. So amongst all this AI theatre and the very bold claims that we're sometimes seeing from vendors, it's very hard for HR and comp pros to kind of find tools that they can trust. Yes. Olivia, you're involved in obviously designing product here at Payscale. How do you filter out hype and focus on building something really useful for our customers?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ruth. I mean, it's really the biggest challenge, as we've seen through even just the commentary from Mark and Peh in this podcast and all the themes that we've seen in the industry. There's so much noise around what AI is, what innovation is. But what really matters is that we're always feeling really empathetic towards our users and solving those real painful problems. To Pei's point, I think the best kind of comment that he made is we're not just focusing on throwing AI into a workflow. It's really about always recentering on the problem we're trying to solve. So we want to really ground. So for example, one of the hardest things that comp teams face is really proving their business impact at work and having more of a seat at that table. And so not just pricing jobs or maintaining their ranges, but really showing how those pay ranges or decisions are actually laddering up to the strategy of the business. And so we've been investing in features like our compensation strategy compass that you'd see here at the start of this podcast. And what we're doing with Compass is really actually benchmarking an organization's workforce against a cohort of similar companies to show where their pay strategy is driving results or where there's risk. So it's not really flashy tech or, innovation just for the sake of it. We're really honing in on those problems that we've noticed really early on. We actually caught that pattern at the start of this year while everyone was still focusing on, sort of AI-powered job matching, which we did bring to market last year. So we've always kind of focused on what are the themes of the problems that are not being solved yet, and how can we inject some of this innovation to really solve that ourselves.
Great. Yeah, we're looking forward to that Compass launch. We'll provide some details in the show notes on that, but you'll be able to see that coming out in market very soon. And Peh, how do you make sure that AI elevates comp teams and doesn't replace them? Because we have this continual conversation around, is AI going to replace us? We know that's very much not the case anymore. So how do you think about what you're building and what we're releasing here at Payscale is about elevating HR and comp teams?
Yeah. So from that angle, if you kind of think about it, AI is really good at solving the operational day-to-day activity that you need to keep repeating. I think that part of the work on the comp team will eventually get minimized. The mundane work of matching and all those work will actually get reduced as part of the percentage of time that you spend on it. More and more comp time will be spent on the strategic component of compensation. I think that is where AI can actually be a really good partner and technology that help you elevate a lot of those insights. The phases that I kind of think about where we are in is you deploy this technology to help improve efficiency of your workflow, which is we are in the thick of it at this point in time. The next phase of that is applying this technology to extract out insights or intelligence that you might not be able to do yourself because you might not be able to go through so much information and tie it all together. I think that is the next phase of power of AI, but that is not to replace any comp team or anyone's job. It is to surface up the information that is relevant and relying on the comp professional's team with the contextual background to interpret those information and make decisions for themselves, for their organization that is impactful for where they are in the company. There's no way the AI can know how are your strategy behaving at this point in time. The contextual information, historical progression of the company's strategy and vision and all those are all relying on human to help interpret the result. AI is going to help with that and not going to replace that.
Yeah, I kind of think of it as, when I think about it in the realm of compensation management, it's a move from like 2D to 3D. We're kind of going from just tell me how I'm paying or what I should pay to like, how should I pay in the context of the geos that I have people in, the competitors that I compete for talent against, and the direction of where skills demand is going in the future. There's so much more that we can really use the compensation data that we have to be able to help practitioners make really strategic decisions, as you say, and it's exciting to think about how we can help them on that journey.
And definitely, I think the other part to that also, Ruth, is all around what is your company or your organization strategy is that is contextualized in that context. For example, if you are in a situation that you just built a a lot of new product capability or product functionality, you might want to double down on your marketing investment, both on the human resource headcount side as well as technology side. The AI should be able to inform you from that perspective where, hey, your investment is actually imbalanced. You're still investing like you're investing in the generically across product. Those kind of nuggets of insight is critical for you to make a very data-informed compensation decision for your organization.
Well, Mark, we're obviously very comp-focused here at Payscale, but you're kind of looking across the HR tech sector. Right now, where are you seeing AI having the biggest difference?
I'm not sure I can identify any one area, though I think compensation is one of them. I think anything to do with numbers and that requires analysis is where AI is really showing its stuff. So I think one aspect of the technology that is not talked about very much, but is still important, is its ease of use. It's very easy to use AI. You ask it a question, it gives you an answer. You don't have to learn a particular language. You can learn about how to ask detailed prompts if you want to, but you can basically make it work with very little knowledge. And I think that makes it very accessible to practitioners. And I think practitioners are starting to take a look at how they actually do things to see where they can integrate AI to basically make their lives easier. And that specific part of it, the interface, it's one of those things we all take for granted until we have to build a product. But now it's really out there. There's an expectation of simplicity with the AI products that are out there.
And are you seeing any particular areas of HR, like within, say, the talent acquisition realm, where you're seeing more use of AI, where we're seeing it being deployed more actively?
Yeah, no, I think in screening, in talent acquisition is probably where I see it used the most. I'm also seeing more people talking about using it with their internal employee marketplaces to help match existing employees to new jobs and help them develop their career path. Benchmarking analysis of compensation is another big area that I hear talk about. I also hear a lot of people talking about how they apply it to benefits, but I think they're really talking about analysis. They're not talking about actually getting anything done with the AI and the benefits. They're talking about being able to put together better benefits packages. And the other area where I think it's really showing its head is in self-service. Again, because of the ease of use, it's very simple for an employee to go in and ask what might be a kind of daunting question if they were trying to express it to a person. But if they have to just sort of type out the question in a way that a GPT or an LLM will understand it, they do that pretty easily and they do that pretty well.
Yeah, there were some great examples. I went to a couple of sessions. I don't know if any of you attended, then there was one with Salesforce and then one with IBM where they were both showcasing their internal HR interface, which is where employees would be able to completely do all their interaction in terms of everything they might need as an employee. So it was a really good example of how an agent kind of brings multiple data silos together and becomes really powerful for the employee. And as you say, not having to deal with a human. I mean, if I think about my two daughters who are both 21 and 24, if I ever ask them to actually pick up a phone and speak to someone, they never want to do that. So maybe we're building these tools for the future generation as well.
I think it's really important to consider that aspect of it, the ease of use, because I think there's always been a disconnect in HR technology between the people who design it and build it and the people who use it. I've gone to a number of vendor conferences where the vendors talk about their roadmap, they talk about their new tools, they talk about their new solutions, and then they mention kind of as an aside that, oh, they've just added a fix, so now it's easier to upload a spreadsheet into the system. That is what gets the applause from the audience. The roadmap never does. But we have to remember practitioners in any part of HR, they're really buried under a lot of processes and a lot of work with a lot of data. And so when it helps them do their job in a easier, more streamlined, more logical way that fits with the way they think, is going to be seen as valuable.
Yeah. I think it's a real challenge for vendors because we've said already on here today that the pace at which AI is evolving and which vendors are, wrapping it into their roadmap is just so fast. I mean, I've been in HR tech for 15 years. I've never seen solutions change so much in 12 months. But at the same time, those solutions still have a load of legacy issues and a load of tech debt, that they haven't resolved. So you've kind of got these two forces going at the same time. Right. And whilst AI kind of promises you this panacea of it's all amazing and you just press a button. A lot of these platforms have still got a lot of tech debt that they're dealing with. So I think we just have to maybe manage our expectations around that.
I think that's true. I think marketing of AI kind of jumped the shark when I saw somebody was producing a time clock and they kept talking about how the time clock was AI driven. And I have yet to be able to figure out why AI would really matter to a time clock and an employee is using it.
Yeah. Well, I think Olivia and Peh, you both spoke to the fact that we maybe have thought less about the gravy train of AI, but we've been trying to think about the specific problems that AI is trying to solve. And one of those is one of the most common problems that we often hear from our customers, which is the lack of availability of data when they're doing benchmarking. So they buy a data set, they want to price a job, they can't price all the jobs that they have. So that is one problem that we took and we sought to improve with AI. So Olivia, do you want to tell us about the Explore experience and the Verse experience and how we've used AI to solve that problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Explore is our really quick sort of data exploration product that we've introduced, and it's backed by our data set Verse, and that's a model data set. And so what Verse is doing in the Explore tool is really doing the extra work for our customers in filling in the missing or overly narrow market data. And it's doing that with AI by predicting those reliable things where traditional comp surveys or traditional comp market data does not have the actual raw match data. So it will do the work to kind of fill in those gaps for our customers in the more narrow scopes. So really, really helpful. And you're seeing that where someone's looking for a really narrow piece of data, they can't find it. And typically they'd have to move on, use a higher level scope and adjust it accordingly or weight it accordingly. But in this case, we actually are filling all of the different locations or different narrow scopes that they're using. And so it really helps kind of bring forward the insights that they're really looking for when they get really granular. And it's all backed by that raw data as well. So it's really reliable and we have confidence in the ability to fill those gaps.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I think that's been one of the most exciting things that we've seen come off the production line here this year, and had a lot of positive feedback from customers in terms of focusing on AI to be problem solving. Now, if we think about looking ahead, I think some of the issues that we are going to see, obviously the pace of development, but also I think governance, trust and transparency are also going to become important issues. There's the race of AI, but how closely are we governing that? What are you thinking about, Mark, as you think about the next 12 months and AI in the HR landscape? What do you think are going to be some of the key milestones that we might see?
I'm not sure if I can think of any specific milestones, but I do think things are going to slow down, at least in terms of product launches and such. It's still very early in the lifespan of this particular generation of AI. And think about it, that ChatGPT only came out, about 2 years ago? And look at all that's changed since then. But I think they're coming close to hitting a wall where they can't get beyond efficiency. Right now, that's the pitch. AI increases your efficiency. Well, what else does it do? Nothing really. Everything kind of falls from that increase in efficiency. I think that the current generation technology is running I think that the messages to the audience about how it works has to be focused a bit to make it more realistic. I don't think we're going to start to see smart robots or extremely smart agents that are thinking for themselves or even coming close to that. So I think it's going to be much like HR tech was kind of getting back to business. I think the same thing's going to happen with AI development this year.
How would you respond to that, Peh? You think about, you're knee deep in our product memo. We're currently preparing to roll out our roadmap for 26. How do you think that's an accurate reflection in terms of what we're thinking about here?
I think, actually, I kind of agree with Mark, how he described it. The AI is gaining a lot of attention because it can drive a lot of efficiency in some of the workflow. But everyone knows, everyone's aware that it's really, really easy to get to 80%. The other 20% will take 10 times the time to basically get right before it will be really effective. So from that perspective, we see an acceleration of the 80%. We will see a slowdown as people figure out what is the 20% that it can do and do reliably and in a very trustworthy way. So that is why at this point, the human is still in the middle to basically make sure everything that is done is accurate, because this impacts business, this impacts decisions. So you want to make sure that AI is not making all the decisions for you and run the business on your behalf without any drivers on the seat. That is where I think it will evolve. The second part, I think, as we kind of settle on that part, the next phase of beyond efficiency, Mark was kind of talking about, the way I kind of see it evolve is really around the intelligence and insight aspect. AI is really good plowing through a bunch of data, trying to find pattern matching and things that might be disparate and surface it up to people to kind of basically, hey, it's based on everything that I've seen you done in the last 5, 10 minutes to 20 minutes or the last few days, this might be relevant for some decision that you want to make. I'm not going to give you or tell you what to do, but I'm going to surface you the information. Then it's more on the subject matter expert of the use case or application to kind of surface it in a way that makes sense for someone to be able to internalize it. We are in a situation where there's information overload. A lot of information is not really useful for us. It's actually contextualized information that is being surfaced to me, allow me to make a much more efficient decision. I think one of the things that I've been telling my folks is around, it's no longer the answer that you're getting. You're trained to know what question to ask. You will get the answer. What is the question that you want to ask? And that is becoming the next phase of become professional, or even anyone that's using AI is being trained to figure out what is the right question to ask, and AI will help you surface up the relevant information so that you can make the right decision.
Mm-hmm. That's probably one good tip for our listeners as they think about, how can they prepare to leverage AI and get the most out of AI, is obviously thinking of what are the questions that they want to ask, or what are the big problems that they can't solve. And have you got any other advice, Olivia, in terms of preparing practitioners for success with AI in their organization?
Yeah, I think really to re-echo Peh's commentary and even some of the notes that Mark had made, everyone's thinking about being more thoughtful, really understanding that what are the right questions to ask and what am I looking for to better support my entire business, right? So with the practitioners, you're seeing more and more from pretty much every single one that I'm speaking to in my day-to-day is that they're really expected to take that seat at the table with their executives. They're expected to take the seat at the table for their business. They're not behind that curtain anymore. That's actually a really commonly used phrase that I hear from all of them. I have this new responsibility where I'm not behind the scenes crunching numbers and looking for data. I'm really representing the HR of my organization with my executive team and with my board. So I need to understand the greater business impact, not only what it is and what my strategy is, but also how to communicate that in a language that is shared across folks that aren't in HR per se. And so really translating their language to kind of fit the mold of the business, understanding and conveying the impact that they have relative to the business is absolutely going to be the most important. And of course, all of that is only enabled by having platforms to rely on, systems or partners in the space of HR and comp like Payscale, who can give you that guided language, who can have that same thoughtfulness and empathy through all the features that we provide and, all the partnership that we have together.
Yeah, and I think it's perfect timing that we're starting to get this capability through this technology for compensation practitioners, because if you hark back to the other challenge that I said we're talking about most in 2025 is pay transparency. And, compensation has never been as exposed as it is today. And the explainability of compensation and your compensation strategy has never been more intense. And we haven't always been very good. I mean, I'm a comp practitioner by trade. Most of the time I spent my time locked in a back room somewhere and no one was allowed to know what job I did, and compensation was very secret. And that world has completely changed. And as you say, now, compensation, HR expected to be at the table explaining both to executives, to employees, to managers about why compensation is the way it is. And having this technology allows them to do that. Well, thank you all for joining me today. And before we close out, I'd love to just go around the room and ask you what was your kind of one takeaway from HR Tech this year. Mark, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I heard more talk about employee experience this year than I've ever heard at HR Tech before. And it was all related to fairly simple things. It wasn't about a grand program or a grand application. It was about the kind of work that you folks are doing, just making things easier to use and allowing them to provide better information easier. When employees can get away with doing something like that, their experience is better. So that was everywhere. So that was striking.
And Peh, from your perspective, what was your one takeaway you'd like to share with the audience?
I think the major thing for me is there is a lot of AI technology, and every company is trying to solve their problem space with AI. One thing that kind of a major takeaway for me is a lot of those are solving within their space. There is this component of a potential gap that I don't see too much across the HR tech vendor that actually presented their solution is how they interconnect between the different solutions to basically surface up much more useful information, because you don't run anything in silos anymore, right? Yeah, they're all interconnected and they drive outcome and they drive result. I think that's one takeaway where everyone's trying to solve that because the technology is still so new. But the interconnectivity to drive better outcome is something that I think is not there yet, and because of where we are in the maturities.
And Olivia, from yourself, what would be your one takeaway from HR Tech?
Yeah, I'll build a little bit off of Pei's point. One of the biggest topics that we discussed was sort of moving from redesigning work to re-engineering work. That was another one of those quotes that I heard many of times at HR Tech. And I feel like there's a huge distinction there. And the missing piece that, to Pei's point, we've noticed with this sort of chat is when you're moving from redesigning to re-engineering the work, you really do, it's critical to kind of pay attention to the different areas in which these workflows are interrelated, not just within that silo. And so it means asking if AI could take on parts of analysis or pattern recognition or even storytelling in some instances, what higher value work can we do instead? And how does that pertain to the other areas within, the greater workflow, not just the workflows that I typically work within? And so, yeah, that was a missing piece that I noticed in some instances, but I definitely think that the overarching value point and the topic that was repeated over and over was that concepts that we're working toward the re-engineering of how we see work today for HR professionals.
Yeah, I kind of feel that we don't even know what the world of work looks like yet. And somehow we're trying to build the solutions for that. And I think that was one of my takeaways from HR Tech, along with what will be the pace of consolidation of the HR stack, and how very much in HR and compensation, we need to really work cross-functionally with all of kind of like our executive team in terms of thinking about overall technical and data transformation. And I think we can't even think, I wonder how long HR Tech, for example, will continue to exist, or will it all just like roll up to workforce tech, and we'll all be thinking about that in another 4 or 5 years' time. So yeah, so much to think about. Always a great event, and definitely gets the brain cells whirling when I come back from that event. So, okay, well, thank you, Olivia, Peh, and Mark, for joining me today on Comp and Coffee. A lot to be thinking about in terms of AI. We will link in the episode Payscale's practical AI resources for you, and recap from HR Tech in the show notes. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't plug that our compensation best practices survey is now open for fielding. That's our annual strategy and research that we undertake here, which normally has about 5,000 practitioners who take part, and it helps you to focus on what's going to be happening in 2026. So we'd love you to take part in that. Again, we'll include the link to that in the show notes. Otherwise, if you have anything that you'd like us to talk about or any feedback on this episode, then you can get in touch with us at coffee@payscale.com. And we love receiving your emails and your feedback. So thank you again. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Peh, for joining me today.
Thanks, Ruth.
Thank you.
Thank you.